I remember this one time during a family vacation in sunny Florida when we decided to treat ourselves to a nice evening at a local steakhouse. Little did we know that this dining experience would turn into a memorable tale of bizarre service and an unhelpful manager. As we settled into our seats, we couldn't help but notice our waitress's peculiar behavior. She had that distant look in her eyes that's often associated with being higher than a kite. At first, her mix-ups and forgetfulness seemed amusing, a harmless side effect of her apparent trance. But the situation took a turn for the worse as the evening progressed. Our waitress started mixing up orders, dropping things left and right, and essentially causing a minor chaos in the restaurant. While it wasn't the level of service we had expected, it was forgivable to some extent. However, the real shocker came when it was time to settle the bill. Our table and two others nearby all decided to pay with credit cards. Our waitress collected all 3 checks and disappeared for a while. When she returned, she had no recollection of which credit card belonged to whom. Chaos ensued as the patrons tried to figure out the mix-up. Frustration was building. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we managed to sort out the credit card situation, or so we thought. But as my dad took a look at the receipt, he realized that we had been charged for the meal of the people sitting at the table next to us. You might think that this isn't a big deal, but the plot thickens. Their meal was significantly more expensive than ours, making this billing blunder quite substantial. My dad decided to speak with the manager, hoping to find a reasonable solution to this ordeal. However, the manager's response was far from satisfactory. He simply shrugged it off and told my dad, "Tough luck." Despite the clear mix-up and the frustration of everyone involved, the manager refused to make amends. Needless to say, the restaurant's refusal to address the situation left all 3 tables in disbelief and disappointment. It was an evening that none of us would forget, not because of the delicious steak, but because of the unforgettable experience of baffling service and a manager who wouldn't budge. A couple of weeks ago, I found myself in a trendy hipster restaurant, the kind that Foursquare recommended to me. Intrigued, I decided to give it a shot. The atmosphere was buzzing, and I took a seat at the bar, which had an open view of the bustling kitchen. It was clear that the place had its own unique style. Every worker there was a tattooed, beanie-wearing guy with full sleeves and gauges. The food, I must admit, was absolutely delicious. I savored every bite of it while watching the cooks craft their culinary creations. But little did I know that my dining experience was about to take a rather unexpected turn. As I waited for my bill, an unsettling incident occurred. Not one, but 2 cockroaches scuttled across the bar. At first, I was oblivious to the commotion next to me. However, my fellow diner started stabbing the bar top with a knife, and I couldn't help but exclaim, "What on earth are you doing?" Then I saw them. 2 roaches had made their grand appearance. One of them, much to my horror, had found its way into my purse. The other made a beeline towards the kitchen prep station. What was more unsettling was that 2 of the workers who were right there simply chuckled at the sight. Needless to say, my tipping plans took a dramatic turn. I left no tip, and to my astonishment, was confronted about it by the staff. I told them about the roaches and how they had laughed instead of offering a genuine apology, or at the very least, a concession on the bill. Their response: they claimed it wasn't their fault that roaches had made an appearance, and argued that, since I had already eaten all my food, there was no issue at hand. Their response was far from what I expected, and it certainly wasn't the right way to deal with such a situation. It was clear that I wouldn't be returning to that establishment anytime soon. I made sure to spread the word among my friends, warning them to steer clear of the place. The incident had left a lasting, less than appetizing impression. Oh, and the purse. Well, I had to empty its contents entirely just to ensure the other roach hadn't sought refuge in there. It had, much to my dismay, and I couldn't help but react with a mixture of horror and frustration. Roaches in a restaurant. Not something I'd ever want to experience again. One evening, my brother and I decided to dine at Denny's, which, as it turns out, might have been our first mistake. After finishing our meal, we were all set to pay the bill when the waitress dropped an unexpected bombshell. Also, our credit card system is down, so we can only accept cash payments. This twist of fate left us in a bit of a quandary. Between the two of us, we had a mere $15 in cash for an $18 bill. You can see where this is headed. When we approached the counter to settle our tab, the manager weighed in on the situation. He declared our cash payment unacceptable, firmly stating that one of us would have to stay put inside the restaurant while the other ventured out to scrounge up enough cash. Alternatively, he suggested, we could simply leave our credit card number, including the crucial 3-digit security code on the back, with him. He assured us that he would manually process the card once their system was back online. While my brother embarked on a quest to find an ATM and secure the elusive cash, I was left behind, waiting for his return. You'd think this would have been a straightforward issue to resolve, but no, not at Denny's that evening. In the end, the whole episode revolved around a mere $3. A trifling sum, you might say. But for us, it was the principle of the matter. A couple of drinks comped to smooth things over would have more than sufficed. However, Denny's managed to turn this minor inconvenience into a deal-breaker. The final verdict. We vowed never to return to that particular Denny's again, a decision spurred on by nothing more than a mere $3. It's funny how the little things can make all the difference. I once found myself in a Las Vegas hotel, attending a conference, when a peculiar opportunity presented itself. The hotel had devised a special dinner and a show package deal for its guests, and it immediately piqued my interest. The offer included a visit to the hotel's Japanese teppanyaki-style restaurant, where skilled chefs prepared meals right at your table, followed by a show at one of the hotel's theaters. What made this all the more intriguing was that the show starred none other than Andrew Dice Clay, in what appeared to be a comeback attempt. Eager for a bit of Vegas entertainment, I decided to give it a go and purchased the prepaid package. Little did I know what I was in for. The evening of the performance arrived, and I headed to the restaurant with my voucher in hand. The moment I walked in, it was clear that the staff was unaccustomed to dealing with customers like me. My mere presence seemed to throw them into a state of mild confusion, prompting a flurry of contemplative glances exchanged among the restaurant staff. Despite the restaurant's relative emptiness, a chair was hastily added to a table already occupied by other diners. The situation was rather perplexing. I found myself subjected to what felt like a clandestine discussion among the staff, spoken in hushed, albeit frustrated, tones. I complied with the arrangements, allowing the servers and table chef to guide me through the culinary experience. I couldn't deny that the meal was quite delicious. However, I couldn't shake the uncomfortable atmosphere that seemed to persist throughout the evening. It was evident that I was not particularly welcome at this establishment, a feeling I found difficult to ignore. As the time for the show grew nearer, I decided to make my way to the theater, guided by the prospect of watching Andrew Dice Clay take the stage. Before leaving, I left a generous tip beside my plate, not only as a gesture of goodwill, but also in the hopes of smoothing any ruffled feathers. I figured that my part in this peculiar dinner would be at an end. As I made my way to the restroom, little did I know that another twist awaited me. Upon exiting the restroom and heading back towards the theater, I passed by the restaurant once more. Suddenly, I was intercepted by my waiter, who came rushing out with an air of urgency, speaking to me rather harshly in Japanese. Perplexed and somewhat taken aback, I realized that there might be a communication issue. It appeared that the restaurant staff was convinced that I had not settled my bill, despite the fact that I had already paid the hotel for the dinner portion of the package. A small crowd began to gather as my waiter continued to raise his voice, and most peculiarly grabbed hold of my elbow, preventing me from walking any further. I struggled to communicate my side of the story, as my limited Japanese was hardly up to the task. Just when I thought this ordeal couldn't get any stranger, a savior appeared. Someone else from the restaurant who spoke both English and Japanese, It was then that the true nature of the situation came to light. The staff was fully aware that I had indeed paid for the dinner, but their grievance was specifically related to the fried rice I had been served. Apparently, this seemingly innocuous side dish was not part of the special deal I had struck through the hotel. Given the lavish and extravagant surroundings of this grand hotel, my generous expenditures on the room, the significant amount I had already invested in the dinner and show deal, and the $20 bill I had left as a tip, I was somewhat stunned to find myself being pursued for an additional $8, all for a serving of fried rice I hadn't even ordered. At that moment, a sense of incredulity washed over me. I weighed the grandeur of the hotel, the considerable sum I had spent on the conference, and the entertainment package against the mere $8 they were demanding for the unintended side dish. It was a lopsided equation, and it was difficult to believe that they were insisting on this extra charge. With a nonchalant shrug of my shoulders, I followed the staff back into the restaurant. I walked over to my table and retrieved the $20 bill I had previously left as a gratuity. Slowly and deliberately, I put the money back in my wallet, all while counting out 8 $1 bills. I handed them to the insistent waiter and, without a word, left the restaurant and made my way to the theater to catch the show. In the end, the much-anticipated performance by Andrew Dice Clay turned out to be a disappointment, as one might expect. However, this curious culinary escapade in Las Vegas, marked by its bizarre insistence on an $8 fee for a dish I never ordered, will remain etched in my memory as one of the most peculiar dining experiences I've ever encountered.